digital transformation for your company. I'm James Staten, a VP and Principal Analyst in Forrester's C-Suite research team, with a focus very much on how you can leverage these kinds of things to drive digital transformations and innovations that reposition your company as the market leader. Now, as you go down the path of digital transformation, there are two areas that you want to be focusing on. First and foremost is driving improved digital experiences for your customers. And as you can see in the example on here, this means understanding what kind of engagements your customers want more of or are transitioning to, and how can you maximize the value of those new experiences using the technologies they care about and using technologies behind the scenes that make these kind of values happen. And it's not just mobile applications, as you see in this example. You also want to be looking very much at digital operations that your organization puts in place. And the example, as you see here, is what we see happening in the healthcare industry, where we're seeing digital solutions starting to be added through every part of the overall experience, not just for customers, but also for the employees, so that they can deliver higher, faster, more effective values that are driven very much on faster, accumulated, and integrated and aggregated customer insights, so that we make sure that the new digital solutions we're bringing out there are providing higher value to customers. Now, where should you prioritize this? We unfortunately see far too many companies that prioritize going down this path in response to digital disruptors who have entered their market with services and capabilities. And I'd love to say that they're doing this fast, but no, most organizations are doing this fairly slow. As a result, what you really want to focus on is how can I shift from being a fast follower or just a slow follower into being a leader? And if you want to be a leader, this is what is highlighted here in blue that you should be making as your priorities. When you're looking at your goals and what you're trying to accomplish with the digital transformation, make sure that you are defining what is the solution and what space should this solution look to address, rather than wait for somebody else to do it and say, look, there's the verification of what we need to do. Now we know what we should do. How you go about this needs to be very aggressive, and this is where you're going to want to leverage agile capabilities and functionalities, and you're going to want to ensure that your data collection of customer insights is happening as close to real time as possible, and not just once, but throughout the entire process. Your approach needs to be very focused on ensuring that you are giving the customer the insights and the visibilities they need, and that the experience you're giving to them looks a lot more like what many companies view as disrupting themselves, the approach and the model that companies like Amazon are taking, which is to proactively give new values to their customers before the customer has said, why can't you do this? Why can't you give me that? Look at what this other company is doing. Come on. This is why you want to do this. And you don't want to do this just by yourself, but you want to engage your ecosystem to help deliver this value and this capability. And they may be the engine that helps you make sure that this solution is right. And as I mentioned before, you don't want to do this just once. You want to make this an ongoing program and process inside your company, because what you want to do is make sure that you are, through the iterations, year after year after year, taking additional insights, using them in an agile fashion to enhance your solution more and more and more. And when you do that, you end up seeing scenarios like this blue line that the leaders have, where through all of these cycles of iteration of their solutions that are driven by additional real-time insights they're getting from their customers, they continue to expand the value of the solution going forward. And as you see, what happens oftentimes with followers is that they are gathering those kinds of insights as well, but only in response to actions that have happened from others. If they do it effectively, then they hold on to their market share and to their value. But if they don't, if they're very, very slow in how they do that, you see in the gray line, you can expect to see your value, your revenues, your profitability drop off as a result. Now, as I mentioned, One of the key aspects of accomplishing this is to make sure that you are gathering as much information about what your customers want in real time as possible. And this is an area that Forrester can help you with beyond simply providing advisory capabilities here through software that we provide called Feedback Now. This allows you at your retail locations through a physical device that you see highlighted here to be able to gather real-time feedback from your customers about the experiences they're having. And it's not just a physical asset, it's also an application functionality that you can add to your mobile applications, to your websites, and to other resources so that you can gather this real-time insights anywhere in the customer experiences that you are gathering. Now, in addition to tools like this, what you need to be doing is looking across your entire company and your entire ecosystem about where is relevant data being collected about what our customers want, and don't leave them in isolation. Use your IT department as the engine to aggregate all of this data so that you can get broader insights than what just some of these departments and just through some of these mechanisms you see a customer insight. For example, we oftentimes find that the teams that think they have the best customer experience insights is the marketing organization. And what they're oftentimes gathering is the feedback they get from the website, the feedback they get from the mobile apps on what they have been marketing. You don't want to just do that. That is obviously very, very valuable, but you also want to integrate into that data and insights being collected by your support organization, by your channel partners, and by social media that are saying what else the customers are articulating. And oftentimes what they're articulating is not in response to what marketing put out there, but in response to challenges they're running into, additional needs and values they're trying to accomplish, which go beyond what you alone provide. And if you can aggregate all of this data, that allows you to truly understand what is it that your customers need and what is the journey that your customers are heading down. And that is another key point for you to pay attention to, customer journeys. We highly recommend that you build out customer journey maps for the classifications of customers that you want to focus your digital transformation efforts around to improve their lives. This doesn't mean creating one journey that you think applies to all of your customers. As you can see here, in one example of a health insurance company's effort, the key is to identify what segments of your customers you should be building journeys for so that they will be relevant to as many customers as possible when you build out these solutions. Not every health insurance customer, of course, is a young family, and this is the kind of profile they built. And when you understand the journey, you're not just understanding what they're trying to do right now and their journey towards tomorrow. You want to be looking further out in their journey. What are they going to need a year from now? What kind of things in the market could happen that could hinder them accomplishing those goals? And how can we apply technology to solve these issues? Now, when you aggregate all of this information to create these journey maps, you do want to make sure that since you're going to be gathering this data from your partners as well as from different departments inside your own organization, you're also going to want to then empower the use of the journey map back out to those departments, to those partners, to your ecosystem, and so forth. And what's key to encouraging that and doing that right is to do it securely. And Forrester has long recommended, and we're now seeing very broad adoption of the model you see listed here, which is to set up a security model called Zero Trust. And what that means is don't give any groups, any employees, any organizations insecure access to this data. Make sure that everyone and every app and every API call that is made to this data must have verified and validated security access, because that is what is going to drive the greatest empowerment and allow everyone to share this data and recognize that this data is secure. It also is very necessary for you to take a look at what data I'm going to share, what data I'm not. A really good example, you do not want to broadly share information that is about personal details of individual customers, because that's the kind of stuff that could set you into law violations that we have seen rules like the GDPR from Europe come up for. And if you break GDPR, be prepared to be sued. And you definitely don't want to do that, even though you were trying to go deep on your customers. So, in addition to Zero Trust, to really drive broad adoption of this information and the digital actions that should be coming from this, you want to make sure that you go down these paths you see listed here for your employees as well as for your channel partners and your resellers and others. Make it a priority to do digital training to help them understand what kind of technologies we're talking about potentially applying, how they can use these digital insights that we're getting, and how they can use things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to act on this information much faster and much more effectively. What you also want to do is try to drive a culture change that not only prioritizes digital transformation of your business, but prioritizes innovation. And this means driving, at a minimum, 3 elements. You want to be able to allow all employees and all members of this community to suggest ideas based on the customer insights that they are finding and the analysis of the data that you've exposed to them. And then once these ideas have been agreed upon that, yes, these could make a difference, then you want to empower them through hackathons to be able to prototype these types of solutions and carry them forward. And when we talk about going down this path of prototypes, you want to go down the path of minimum viable product approaches and agile iteration. What you don't want to do is spend 6 months building out a solution you think is right, and then 6 months in, then show it to the customers. No. What you want to do is go as fast as possible to create a solution and show it to as many customers as you can, and get those channel partners involved who are going to be involved in this. And if they have technical skills that can enhance this, get them involved in the creation of that MVP. This will really help you build out a more effective digital ecosystem, which will empower not just you to be able to create these solutions, but for your overall ecosystem to enhance the solutions you put out by adding new values and adding new functionalities. Now, for the organizations who are most effective at going down this path, they tend to tap into software, frameworks, and technology design models like the ones you see listed on here, because you need to drive changes in your organization, changes in the strategy and the framework and the approach that you're going to take. You want to make sure that, as I mentioned, you go as fast as possible with your solutions, but not just fast by itself. You want to be agile, meaning that not only are you going to release things quick, but you are going to respond as quickly as possible to feedback on them, which is oftentimes called a fast failure culture, where you are going to recognize, oh, we only got 30% of what they wanted right. That doesn't mean kill the program. That means start addressing the 70% you didn't get right. And as you add that, show it back to the customer to verify that, yes, this does address what they said wasn't right at the first time they looked at this. You also want to make sure that you go down a path in which you can empower as many people in the company to do this and to participate in these programs as possible, not just isolate it to an R&D team or to an IT team to take this forward. And that is where things like low-code platforms can be incredibly empowering, as well as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics, because these are things that empower anyone inside your company to be able to see greater insights, to be able to take additional actions, and to be able to get the insights necessary to really carry this forward. And if you align all of this with your customer journey mapping, this is how you will be able to prove to everyone why we're doing this, because this is what we're hearing from customers, this is what they're trying to accomplish, and this is how our value to them is going to go up because we have done this. Now, to also ensure that your employee base and your partners truly do see the priority of this, you want to bring out to them a voice of the customer program That shows them the kind of insights you're catching. And make sure that this is not just something that they read and they have to learn from, but that they can contribute to and that they can make it richer. And that is why we were talking before about the Zero Trust platform, because not only do you want them to read this, but you want them to be able to contribute and to improve it, because that is really how this empowerment takes place. Now, the other things that you want to pay attention to, and here's a good example of one company, eBay, who has been driving digital thinking as core to its overall culture change, is to ensure that not only do you train your employees, and not only do you engage them and allow them to be engaged, but that you make sure that they see that the prioritization in this company needs to be customer empowerment, and driving this based off of customer inputs, not protecting our existing revenues and our existing products, but focusing on whatever we do, if it drives up the customer's engagement with us, then we will see new revenue streams, additional profitability, and broader customer bases going forward. That is what is really critical to carry this message forward. And you will run into barriers inside your company, but especially from people who are very focused on the tactical aspects of your business. This is especially true when the KPIs for your employees, for your resellers, for finance, and other parts of your company are incredibly focused on your existing products and services and the tactical actions they're taking to ensure those products are properly positioned. You need to shift that focus. The focus needs to be much more on how do I make sure that my employees are being driven, as I said before, on improved customer value, not protection of historical products. And this is another area where the importance of training your employees on these technologies is really, really important, because what we're finding, and you'll find research on this from other firms as well as ourselves, that it is very clear that artificial intelligence, machine learning, and robotics are coming and are going to be part of most people's jobs going forward. And as a lot of other firms have written about, they think that when robotics and AI enters a job, the people that do that job will lose their job. We disagree. The right answer is that if you train your employees on how robotics and artificial intelligence can enhance their job and make them more effective and allow them to be more agile, that is when they will get on board with this. And so you need to make that a priority. How do I train my employees, help them realize this is not coming to replace their job, it's coming to make them better, and here's how. If they start to get on board with that, now they feel empowered by this type of digital transformation, and they will want you to do more of it, and that's when they're going to suggest more innovation ideas that leverage these technologies so we can take our digital transformation to the next level. And again, if you have a lot of tactically focused people and they hear that through the innovation efforts you're doing, there are new products and services coming out that might just disrupt our current operational processes, might disrupt our current products and services and the way we currently make money, they will block you for that too. And in those circumstances, what we find is most effective for most organizations is to isolate the disruptive innovation team so that they can advance these solutions without running into internal blockers. And once they have gotten the verification and the validation that the kinds of things they're working on are working, then that will be time that they can take it back to the disruptors, because not only can they go to them and say, this is a disruptor, but look at the new value it creates, and look how that is actually going to position us for much greater market leadership going forward. And that is why we see so many of these innovation teams fully dedicated to this particular action, rather than it just being a small portion of their job. But you do want the employees who come up with the ideas to have the engagement with these innovation teams, Doesn't mean that you want to move them into the innovation team full time, but you do want them to be a part of it through the entire process. Because not only will they be the champions for this and be able to help make sure the innovation team knows what we heard, why it should be built a certain way, and what it should accomplish, but then when you have succeeded with the disruptive innovation and now you want to take it back out to the teams that you felt were going to be blockers for this, now you have a champion in their business unit who came up with this idea and who is going to be much more credible to that business unit since he's already a member of that business unit and is not just somebody from R&D trying to make the case. That is where you get the greatest success. Now, as you go down the path of these innovations, that's another area where data plays a very important role. What you want to do with data is you want to be able to understand and articulate very clearly why this innovation should be done, how it should be done, where it should be positioned, how it should be taken to market, and eventually, when the innovation has proven to be true, how can we build out the right cost structure, revenue stream, and business model for bringing this innovation to market. That's a broad set of data. A lot of it starts with the data we already talked about is important to collect, what your customer needs, what they're looking for, what they're ultimately trying to accomplish. All of that is going to be relevant to this process. But as I also mentioned, you want to ensure you have data in here about what are some of the market changes that are coming. And are these going to be barriers that hold the customer back from accomplishing these goals? Are they going to create new opportunities that will help create new values for our customers beyond what they told us they wanted to accomplish and how they should accomplish it? And is there an opportunity for us also to do analysis in the third listing down here on what emerging technologies might best help us accomplish this goal? This is really critical because what we're finding through the most successful leadership organizations is that they are recognizing, as I mentioned, how to use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and a lot of other emerging technologies to provide these new digital customer experiences as well as to enhance the operational excellence of our company. How can we make sure that not only are we building things that we hand to our customers, but that we hand to our employees who, in combination with it, can deliver higher values to our customers. That's what this really is all about. Now, in terms of the emerging technologies, beyond AI machine learning, here's Forrester's full list of recommended technologies that you should be looking at. And we're seeing broad implementations as well as leverages of these things by the leading innovation organizations. And as you can see here, there's a broad set of implementations that you should be taking a look at. Some of these technologies, like quantum computing, are not ready in the market yet, but will be in the future years. And so you do want to be looking at some of your innovations as future offerings rather than tactical improvements that you deliver out. And the companies that make these kinds of investments oftentimes deliver innovations that are known as moonshots. And these are future-looking solutions that can create massive new gains and new values for your company. Now, you don't want to just invest in emerging technologies. What you also want to do is tie the use of those emerging technologies to your existing technologies and assets. And we're finding that most organizations are recognizing that if they go out and build out some new technologies and they tie it into the data that we've been talking about, that is how these new solutions can deliver a much higher value. And they leverage our existing assets, they tie into our existing services, our existing applications, and so forth, so that the value becomes much broader and much easier for us to implement and put in place. And this doesn't mean that you're going to want to necessarily do all of your implementations on-premise. Clearly, you're going to want to tap into cloud services, SaaS applications, and other resources as well. And one of the big reasons you should be looking at the cloud as places to do a lot of your innovations is because of the as-a-service cost model that they provide. by doing your prototypes on the cloud, where you pay for the resources and services you're using on a per-hour basis, that gives you the freedom and flexibility for the agile, fast failure model. You may quickly decide and quickly learn that how we structured this and which service we used isn't working. That doesn't mean kill it. That means I can move it from this cloud to that cloud, and there's almost no cost hindrance for me to do that. And this, again, as I mentioned before, is why you want to start with an MVP model, where you want to start with what is the minimum viable implementation of what the customer has told us they're trying to achieve, and get it to those customers as early as you possibly can. And you don't want to tell them about the function that you have built just based on what is the minimum implementation it's done so far, but you want to say, here's the minimum view, and how we're going to enhance this is this, and here's what we ultimately think it will do for you. That way you'll get feedback from the customer about what you have done so far, and does that have any level of relevance. And as you tell them about the additional things you're planning on doing, you can get from them, oh, wow, if you take this and you add that and you add that, yes, that would give me what I'm looking for. That will help you verify and validate that, yes, this is the right thing to do. And as I mentioned, don't expect that that will always be the conversation. The more common conversation is, here's the minimum viable version of what we have, and here are the additional things we're thinking about doing, which will deliver this value to you. And the customer will come back and say, well, part of that sounds good. I like this piece. I like the idea of adding that piece. The rest of this, I don't think that makes sense. That's the much more common conversation. And when that happens, you then want to not kill the project based on what they said doesn't align. You want to iterate. Make the changes to that based on what they told you. And you want to be gathering all of the data that you get during these MVP assessments from the customers, because you may find that when you do additional innovations, and every organization who is successful as an innovator does not do one innovation at a time. They invest in multiple innovations at a time, and they can take these kinds of insights, and if they share them with the other innovation teams, they may find that what the customer told them actually empowers this other innovation too. Or if we align these two innovations together, now we can satisfy the customer's need much more effectively. And that is a big reason why you want to capture all of this data, align it to the real-time and the historical and the future-looking insights that you hear from your customers, because that is what guarantees and makes sure that you are indeed driving the right actions. And in addition to driving these actions, you also want to make sure that since you need to move away from the very tactical KPIs across your company, as I mentioned, is oftentimes one of the blockers to these types of digital transformation efforts. You want to set the new metrics. So what should those new metrics be? Here's our recommended list. You want to make sure that you know where you sit from a customer experience perspective versus your competitors in the market. And Forrester does this through a survey that we do called the Customer Experience Index that you see listed on here. And we are more than happy to engage with you and making sure you get part of this index and carry it forward. What you then want to look at next is, again, not what have the customers bought from us thus far, but what do we see as a lifetime value that we can expand into. One of the biggest problems a lot of companies run into, and we see this very often, is that they will have a broad portfolio of products, and they will have some highly loyal customers who only buy a couple of them from them, and they stick with those, but they do not see the value of the rest of the portfolio. Don't be comfortable with that, because if these customers are not interested in the rest of your portfolio, you are not having the rest of the portfolio align to what they're ultimately trying to accomplish. And that is another one of the areas digital transformation should be focused on. we want to make sure that of our most important and most valuable customers, that we understand what they're going to need from us in the future, and that we are building that out. And we may not be building it out alone ourselves, but if we can empower our ecosystem to add those services and capabilities to our existing products, that can be another way that this value comes about. So you absolutely want to be doing that. Focus on the lifetime value of your customer, not the tactical what they buy right now. Also to this point, you want to look across your various categories of customers and determine which of these customers are most likely to stick with us. Which ones have historically stuck with us throughout this whole process? Which ones have not, and why have they not? You want to be able to make sure that you are broadening through these digital transformation efforts the collection of customers who do see the value that you provide and do see how that value is increasing. And as a result, stay in your retention, and as you move forward, increase their retention to you. You will find that some customer segments, as I mentioned before, typically only want a couple things from you. And you don't want to lose them just because that is the case. You do want to keep them around, but you want to focus your iterations and your transformations on how is it possible for me to get them to grow to the next level. That's going to be your focus and needs to be what you measure your company on. You also want to be visible to some of the signs that can lead to losing customer retention, things like customer churn. What is the customer seeing from our experience? What kind of next steps in our engagement are they having trouble with? What are they doing that leads them to not buy 3, 4, 5 more products from us, but to buy them from our competitors? Gee, did we misalign with where they were going? Did those competitors digitally disrupt us? We need to change our goals and our focuses so that we keep those customers much more loyal to us and that we have less customer churn. And note that this is not customer loss, but customer churn, because in addition to seeing customers walk away from you, you will also see customers who may walk away at one point and come back. And when they come back, they may not come back for the same value. They may come back for something different that you did. And if you can drive that, then customer churn becomes a positive aspect that you want to track. So you definitely will be thinking about churn from both of those perspectives. And then, of course, and your finance team will be totally on board with this, you will want to track the revenue and sales metrics that you have been doing for a long time. But again, what you want to change in these metrics is not tracking and protecting the revenue and sales of our historical products, but tracking and improving the overall engagement with customers that results in more revenues. And as I mentioned under the topic of customer churn, if the customer's not as thrilled with one of your products and they walk over to another one of your products because of this, that's the kind of stuff that you want to be able to track. If they walk away from you entirely, you absolutely want to track that too, but you want to note not that they just walked away, but why they walked away. And are there things that we're doing in our digital transformation and in our innovations that align to why they walked away and ensuring that they won't walk away forever and that they will churn back in and they will become part of us? So those are the key metrics that you want to be tracking. And all of these things will help you drive the culture change that is so empowering and allows so many companies to become digital transformation leaders. So hopefully this has been relevant to you. We do find that if you want to prioritize digital transformation, you do need to make sure that your top executives are on board with this. Because we do find that in organizations where the top executives don't want to go down this path, it's very hard for the teams underneath to be successful doing this. So make sure you carry this message all the way up and that you get at least the CIO and the CEO on board with this. if not all, of your C-suite executives. You do need to have the agents of change who can help ensure overall broad culture change. And you will not find all of the C-suite executives and all the VPs on board. Some of them you will be able to bring on board and you will get them to change their culture. Some you will not. And in those cases, you're going to want to walk away from them when you make this change. Not everybody wants to hear that, but unfortunately, that is one of those truths in this market change. And we can help you through a lot of the recommendations you saw in this deck, as well as through deeper engagements to drive this kind of change and get your company to that next level. Hope this has been highly relevant to you. Hope it is very driving for what you should be focusing on. And we look forward to engaging with you further to help you make this happen. And as we discussed, data-driven is key to making this successful. And that's why you definitely want to be engaged here with us. Thanks so much for your time.
Hello and welcome to Qlik's Digital Transformation webinar series. I'm David Bolton, Vice President of Industry Solutions and Business Value at Qlik. I head up the Global Industry Solutions and Value team that includes some of the leading industry analytics experts and strategy consultants whose sole focus is on delivering business value and driving customer success within the analytics economy. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by guests from a variety of industries who are going to share their perspective on the role of data in digital transformation and how leveraging data helps identify trends to give a complete view of their business to help drive value. So let's meet some of our guests. Firstly, Karen Zuniga McDowell, who is PhD and Director of the District Performance at the School District of Philadelphia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The School District of Philadelphia is one of the top 15 largest public school districts in the country and is committed to providing a great education for all Philadelphia children. What a great vision to have, right? Karen has almost 20 years of experience in evaluation, data management, college access, and success for K-12 and higher education. In her role at the School District of Philadelphia, Karen oversees the District Performance Office team and projects that include accountability reporting, performance management dashboards, and strategic analytics for both internal and external users. You must be a very busy lady.
Yes.
Next, we have Daniel Greenberg. Thanks for joining, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
Daniel is a member of Risk Management Operations at KPMG. KPMG, as we know, is a global network of independent member firms offering audit, tax, and advisory services. Daniel has over 25 years' experience as a DBA and business intelligence developer, working for companies such as General Electric, Reader's Digest, Merck, iHeartMedia, and KPMG. Busy life too, right? In his role at KPMG in risk management operations, he's responsible for delivering dashboards to internal clients that help them make better business decisions in less time, the whole topic of today's talk. Finally, but not least, we have Ellen Blackwell.
Maybe least.
No, not at all. Digital Business Integration Manager at Accenture. And Accenture, as we know, is a multinational professional services company that provides services and solutions in strategy, consulting, digital, technology, and operations. Again, thank you for joining us. You must be very busy.
My pleasure.
Ellen's also Accenture's Qlik platform lead for North America. She has over 15 years of client-facing business and technical experience and has been delivering Qlik strategic, operational, and development solutions for over 10 years. Ellen's data and application architecting experience has been leveraged across a wide range of industries, including financial services, pharma and biotech, entertainment, hospitality, and many others. Before we get started, let's think of the following. Digital transformation has become a business imperative, and data is at the heart of it. Our world is powered by data, and the potential for companies that harness this is massive. Everyone agrees this is a key topic we need to discuss. Data is revolutionizing the way companies compete, not only by improving decision making, but to drive transformation. So today we're going to explore the role of data with the help of my friends here, analytics in helping organizations transform their businesses in this digital world. And for those of you viewing the webinar, we invite you to join the conversation by asking questions in your local language in the Q&A box on your screen. Or if you like social media, you can join the conversation today using the hashtag available in the event console. So, let us begin. First question, I'm going to turn to Daniel. What types of trends are you seeing in your industry that are really starting to set the stage for how organizations are using data analytics?
Sure. We're seeing our customers ask for more and more data. Can we get them this? Can we get them that? From different systems that we have and integrate it all together. The other trend that we're seeing is almost full circle. They want to get the data out of it and have reports emailed to them in Excel or PowerPoint and things like that that bring in data from not just one but multiple dashboards put into one as summary level data sent to them each day.
So combining lots of silos of data and
Yes.
starting to pull that together.
Yes.
That's a major trend you're seeing. Alan, similar experience?
Similar, although across my clients, I see increasingly the goal of taking insights to action to a new level.
Right.
They want to take an action that leads them back to their transactional system and adding data to their source systems. That's very important. And most clients are not there, and the technology is not necessarily there, but it's evolving. The demand is there.
So you're starting to see people on that journey from kind of descriptive and reporting right through to predictive and hopefully prescriptive in the future, and actually taking action off the data.
Insight to action
Yeah.
to transaction. That's what I'm
Fantastic.
seeing.
Thank you. Same question, Karen. What are you seeing in terms of trends in your industry driving data analytics?
Absolutely want to echo what my colleagues have shared, and people wanting more data and being able to cross the different silos of data and taking that data and turning it into action. Specifically in education, it's also really imperative that when we're being asked to dig into our student data even more so. So we have a long history of sharing data at the very high level. This is what's happening, the average for all students. And now it's really important for us to dig in and look at different subgroup cross-sections and change our unit of analysis to even smaller groups so that we can understand the needs for all of our students.
Yeah, so you're starting to see the need to go from that kind of aggregate level view right down to the
Absolutely.
individual student. And does that have an
Yes.
impact in how you manage their education?
Absolutely. You know, our goal is to support the learning for all students. And, you know, as one of the largest school districts in the country, you can imagine that we're serving students and families with various levels of need. And we're meeting them where they are. And by taking away that focus on the average of the whole and really looking at the uniqueness of each student, we're able to do that with Click and by modeling our data in different ways across these silos.
And that's a great segue to the next question, which is really about how data is helping you to transform. Do you have any real world examples of how you're using data to change or transform the way education is delivered?
Yeah, a really real example, and probably the most timely for us, was the shift in the way that we are rostering our high school students. So as you can imagine, all districts and states have graduation requirements that a student needs to complete certain courses in order to graduate on time. And we know that graduating on time is so critical to a student's long-term success. And what we were seeing is that at the very point of entry of ninth grade into high school, our students weren't always and uniformly across the district being rostered into the correct courses. And so they were starting off track. And by pulling all of our data together and renormalizing what a ninth grade experience should look like across a very diverse city, we're able to really transform our percentage of students that are starting the ninth grade on track, and we're seeing increases in our graduation rates as a result.
So you're actually leading with data to
Absolutely.
understand the rostering requirement to be more successful in graduation.
Yes.
That's a fantastic example, thank you. Ellen, similar question to you. What kind of transformation are you seeing? What examples are you seeing in your clients where they're using data to really drive business process transformation?
Well, at the C-suite, there's a demand now for holistic information and for consistent reporting across the business units. So the business units have had to break down those silos and start working together. And in that process, they are evaluating their data, right? And how they're deriving the information, the insights they're delivering. So we used to report historically. Now they're looking at very minute processes in the moment and how they can make those changes. It's just culturally there's a shift in the way that business units are working together.
So it's a similar theme there, going from that kind of high-level aggregate view to actually seeing the value in the detail.
Yeah.
Something that obviously at Click is one of our key attributes, is being able to get from that aggregate right down to the detail. It's interesting. Daniel, similar
and also the opposite.
Okay.
We have a lot of applications that may give some reporting and analytics in itself, but it doesn't really give the whole picture. So it may be specific to one person's tasks when they're in there. So then we create analytics and dashboards to aggregate the data while bringing in some other corporate data to give them a really good picture of what they're looking at.
So have you got any good examples, obviously without naming names, of organizations that are really using data to change the way they operate?
Oh boy.
That's a tricky one, right? It's a big question. Alan, while he's thinking?
Again, I work for risk management operations. We handle internal applications. So our different departments all benefit from it. It doesn't matter whether it's HR or tax or audit. They all benefit from the ability to look at the data in an aggregate fashion and drill down to it.
Right, okay. Alan, any examples?
Yes, so in many firms, for example, sales was traditionally limited to the sales department. Now with data being pushed down to more levels in the organization, being democratized, so are the decisions.
Okay.
So you can make a sale from almost any point via text. You don't have to go back to the sale. So business is becoming more efficient.
Yeah.
And authorization access is being driven down.
Yeah, so you're seeing companies use more of their collective intelligence further down the organization because they've got access to insights they didn't have previously.
Correct.
That's great. I mean, that's really the definition of democratizing BI, right?
Yes.
So that's a really great example. We have talked about silos. I think they were mentioned 2-3 times, and it's obviously been the bane of many people's lives is dealing with siloed data. I've done a lot of work in healthcare. They have 200-300 systems, and they're all individually siloed, and it's connecting together is the challenge. I'm sure education is the same. The question here really relates to how you're seeing silos being broken down by the use of analytics and data, and perhaps some of the impact across the organization that's having when you're seeing how two data sets may relate for the very first time. You gave a great example there with graduation and rostering. It's not necessarily something you'd expect. Have you seen other examples where silos are being really broken down by analytics?
Yes, I think when people think of school districts, education is the big thing, but not necessarily thinking of us as a small little city. And just about any industry you could imagine, we have that within the school district. So we have engineering and construction, we have legal, we have finance and talent and operations and transportation, food services. And so all of those things, each of those departments or divisions have their own industry standards and practices and silos and the data and the systems. But crossing all of those silos is essential to our ability to serve the whole child. And so we're breaking those walls down little by little through the analytics, and by having wonderful demonstrations of the power of data for action, such as the rostering example that I shared. It is bringing those other divisions in with an interest of, we want to use our data in that way as well. So how can we get our data into Click? How can we have our data modeled across these silos so that we can understand the impact of transportation and getting our students to school safely and on time so that they have sufficient time to eat their breakfast and start learning and learning to read, at the outset, and thinking about our scheduling and what that means if a student might arrive late. So there's constantly moving parts, and I think we're seeing it in many different ways, the power of being able to look at our data across these silos.
So you're showing kind of the art of the possible in that with real-world
Absolutely.
examples to kind of encourage others to think about how they might use data in that sort of way.
Yes.
It's fantastic, really good. Alan, have you seen examples of similar silos being broken down?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, there's a top-down demand for a holistic view of an organization, which requires communication and work across units as well as data sharing. From the bottom up, because of data literacy, right, more and more people in the organization can do something with the data, and they want to do something with the data, and they're much more willing to share their data when others are willing to share it with them. So it's kind of a natural, almost byproduct of data literacy.
So you almost see it as a cultural shift, right? It's a change in thinking.
It is.
Okay,
It
great.
is.
What I see is a natural evolution because people with a silo want to have analytics and reporting on it, so they come to us. Now we own that data, we get it into the data warehouse, and we integrate it with other data. We standardize that they may be pulling names from the HR system or a different system, so someone may show as Dan or Daniel or first name, first name, and we get that all straightened out, and now we have their data in the enterprise data warehouse to use for other systems.
Right. That's a great example. Moving on to more kind of forward thinking. So, we talked a bit at the beginning about this journey from descriptive and reporting analytics through to predictive AI using machine learning. It's obviously a major trend in the industry right now. Everyone I speak to is asking about AI and machine learning.
Right.
Have you got examples of where you're starting to see that happening in the real world?
Sure. So it happens before our data and analytics, but we have a process that scrapes contracts and saves hundreds and hundreds of man hours on it and creates risk categories for it. And then we do analytics based on that. And that process has just been a huge success.
So you're automatically assigning risk to a contract based on
Right.
an AI algorithm?
Based perhaps on keywords or other values in there.
Fantastic. It's a great example. Alan, do you have any examples of that?
Yes. First of all, I want to mention, I can't finish this without mentioning the importance of data, right? Because data in good order, quality data, is important for each of the next phases of this journey, right? So when you get to AI and machine learning, you are kind of forced to evaluate your data, to evaluate your processes, and in that way, companies are becoming more efficient, more effective, and then the more data they have, then they're applying AI and machine learning, for example, in the information they gather from chats with their
So it's almost a secondary
customers.
benefit of AI is that it's actually forcing people to look at the
Absolutely.
quality and governance of their data.
Yes.
That's a very interesting perspective. And what about in schools and education? Are you seeing any use now of AI machine learning, or is this early on in the journey?
We're pretty early in that journey.
Okay.
It's something we're just wading into, but we are heavily focused on our data quality and governance at this juncture in preparation for being able to do even cooler things with our data.
It's interesting. I've seen universities where they've actually used an algorithm to try and predict the likelihood of a child dropping out of a course. Kind of thing I can see pushing down into secondary education, K through 12.
Yes.
So there's lots of great examples out there. It's just finding the best use case and pushing across. Okay. So we talk about opportunities for organisations. We talk a lot about data literacy. I think we've spoken about that a little bit at the beginning of the panel. Data literacy is something that's very dear to our hearts at Qlik. It's something we believe without adequate data literacy in organisations and across communities, it's impossible to really get the benefit of analytics and data. So we've done some research. Data Literacy Index found that firms with higher levels of data literacy have a greater enterprise value, as much as 3 to 5%, so significant financial gain in encouraging and driving a data literate culture within business. For the respondents we surveyed, that represented somewhere between $300 and $500 million of market value. So we're talking about significant amounts of money. I'm really interested in what kind of steps or investments are being taken in your organisations to try and drive that workforce literacy, the data literacy, which we talk about. Daniel, I'll start with you.
Sure. So when we produce a new dashboard for some of our clients, the management that was involved from the client side may be well aware of the dashboard, but then it's forced upon different users.
Okay.
So we try and do things, besides the obvious training and help screens, we try and shadow some users sometimes and ask the questions, what next, and make sure they understand how to use the dashboard and prevent them from doing exporting to Excel and then making a pivot table. That's my worst nightmare. So by shadowing, it does help us a lot.
Okay, that's a good, interesting approach. Alan?
So I've been speaking from the client perspective, but in terms of data literacy, Accenture has internally introduced learning paths for data literacy to make sure, regardless of the role in the organization, we're becoming data literate. Okay. And we also offer that in the community to nonprofits and then to our customers.
Wow,
Data
so it's a full educational
path.
process.
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic, and I guess in education this is something that's key. So how are you driving data literacy within your organisation?
We're doing it in a few different ways. We were really intentional about setting up quarterly professional development for all of our end users when we first rolled out our internal dashboards, and we've continued that practice so that we're introducing them as a large group as a whole and then having smaller workshop breakouts to dive in deeper to each application that we roll out. But I think one of the highest leverage things we've done costs no money at all, which was standardizing our objects and our graphs and our charts across different data content areas so that we're only teaching them to read a chart once. Regardless of their familiarity with the content in it, they understand that green means current year. They understand that red is an area that I need to focus on. They understand that in our combo charts, the dot represents last year, and if the bar is higher than last year, then that means that I'm doing better. That blue is a good thing and an area to celebrate. And so just by standardizing that, we're teaching them to read it once. But then we can really focus our attention on building their literacy up around the data content itself and take away some of that angst that a new user might have when they're interacting with the dashboards for the first time.
Yeah, and I've seen terrible examples of people doing exactly the opposite. Every dashboard looks different, every visualization. So I think that's a fantastic approach. Any other ideas on that you've seen around data literacy?
That's key.
That's a good one, right?
Consistency across the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously data literacy is a part of the cultural shift that I think every business is trying to drive to get people thinking, working with analysing data to help with their roles. What kind of cultural imperatives are you seeing within your organisations to really drive that sort of data-first approach? Is there anything in addition to the training? Are you starting to remove traditional reporting and put in more analytical views in some areas? Give me some examples of how you're driving that culture.
I think it really comes from building that culture of the democratization of data.
Yeah.
And so it starts at the top, and the focus on data as an asset and as something that we need to use to drive our decisions. But then democratizing it so that every single layer of the organization is seeing the exact same number. Yeah. And not that I have just a window into the things that I affect, but that I can see as an end user or as a building leader, that I can see beyond just the students that I serve, but how other schools like me are doing across the city and how all of our schools are doing across the city. And a real value add for us has also been giving our users data that they're asking for in order to do their jobs. So for our high school principals, them being able to see the data for the middle schools that feed into their high schools was a game changer. Because now they know the environment that their new students are coming from and what areas they need to have additional supports.
So it's engaging your user community early in the process so you really understand what's going to impact their roles. I think that's a really great example. Anything else from a kind of cultural change perspective? Daniel,
Sure. Each successful dashboard builds new opportunities. When they have success with the data and they see how much time and time is money, it saves them. They come up with new ideas and ask for more and more. So, you know, it really comes down to a good, successful dashboard is the foundation to have more data, more democratization of the data, and more data literacy for everybody.
Brilliant. Alan, any thoughts on cultural shift and how you're encouraging that in your clients?
Again, data used to belong to the elite, and I think that at the beginning of these transformations, you'll find groups that hold on tightly to their Excel reports or whatever, you know, reporting system they're using, and the cultural shift is now breaking down those barriers and creating sharing, and the excitement of a successful dashboard in one group drives
kind of a trickle effect,
generates more interest and desire for other groups.
It's interesting, and I mean, certainly one of the points you made there, and I think we've all made, is around kind of expanded transparency, and something that certainly I've seen have a huge success is when data is shared in a much more transparent way than we've seen previously, and suddenly everyone feels like they have ownership in this, and that change in culture, you know, demands and drives more insight, more analytics, more dashboards. So I think that's a really great point to just stop and remind the audience actually that they have the opportunity to ask questions. So there's a conversation chat panel on the screen. Please feel free to ask questions in local language, and we've got industry experts available and ready to answer any of the questions you might have. So just to drop back to the final question, so we've talked a lot about everything from data literacy to siloed data, some of the challenges around driving culture and adoption. If I ask you to summarize the role of data analytics and data literacy in your organization's plans for the future, thinking maybe 2-3 years ahead, how would you describe that in kind of a summarized view? Let's start with the school district.
You know, when I hear this question, the first word that comes to mind is transformational. It has really transformed the way that we do business, and we're leading with data first. And education has a long history of monitoring and looking at performance data, but it's always been limited to the student. You know, how is the student doing versus turning it on ourselves? How are we doing in serving the student? And so I see us continuing that shift where the focus is on ourselves. How are we supporting our students? And using data to inform action, leading with data rather than it being a summary, you know, 18 months down the road of like, this is how you did back then, but really using it in real time so that we can quickly pivot in real time to change our actions and have a greater impact.
So it's about transformational impact across the business and data being at the heart of that.
Yes.
Perfect.
That's
pretty
exciting.
much how I introduced the session. So couldn't have asked for better. Thank you. Daniel, same question.
Sure. You know, some other things that we're seeing, again, goes back to full circle, tightly integrating with their source system, and also having the ability to maybe update the records directly in the business intelligence tools and back into the main system so that there's really just one record of truth there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think we'll see a lot more of that moving forward. Alan, same question.
The word that comes to mind for me is central. Like, data transformation is central to every client I am with.
Yeah.
Regardless of the specifics of an individual project, data transformation is central to every client, and every client is is in some point of that journey.
Perfect, and that leads me to, I guess, a cheeky question, but we're going to try and get some advice out of you guys. We've got a panel of experts here. If you think about the journey you've been on, what can you advise the audience to do? What are the kind of 2-3 key success factors in driving an analytics program? Daniel?
You've got to try and guide the users to the right answers. A lot of times people will come in and say, I want this 10,000-page report by 500 columns reproduced, and that's all I want. Right. That's where the and then comes in. What do you do next? And then, and then, and then. Oh, you want a pivot table. Boom, we just saved you 5 hours worth of work. But you also have to listen to them. It's not going to be successful if they're adamant that they want something and it's not included.
Brilliant. Great advice. Alan?
It's not a sprint.
Yep.
It really is a journey, and be prepared for the journey. Appreciate the importance and centralness of the data in the journey and the amount of time it takes to build that data, and break it up, phase it out, and create deliverables that are going to satisfy your customers in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
Because that, again, generates the interest, the buy-in, the support. So I could list a dozen things that I've seen wrong in almost every single implementation.
Okay.
But what does work is seeing this as a journey, not a sprint, breaking it up into phases, keeping data integrity at the center of your process, and delivering to engage your users.
Perfect. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, I want to follow along with exactly what Ellen is sharing, that it's a journey, it's a process, and embrace that. And know that it's iterative, and you're going to make some gains, and then you'll fall a few steps back. So patience is essential, but also collaboration. As you're breaking down these walls of the different silos and modeling data together, visualizing it, analyzing it for the first time in ways that it's never been before, at first you'll likely get more questions than answers. But embrace that and view it as a good thing and not as a stumbling block. And so for that for us has been a really big win, because it's forcing us to see our data in new ways and then to see ourselves and our business in new ways as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great.
I'd like to add to that, it's very important not to lose sight of data first. It's the only thing that really matters. It doesn't matter how great the dashboard looks if the numbers don't tie out. So let's get the data right, and then we'll worry about making it look pretty.
Brilliant.
I would add one last point too. Be prepared to get results you did not expect.
Yeah.
And embrace those.
Prepare for the unexpected.
Prepare, yes. You will have assumptions about your business and your data, and you will be proven wrong.
Yeah.
And it's a new opportunity for you to do something different.
You may even find that the record of truth is wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all seen that over the years. There's some great information available actually in the console. So for those watching, there's some available information. You can download it. Lots of advice, support, guidance around the kind of topics we've been talking about today. So with that, I'd really like to thank you so much for your time. It's been a great session. We've had so many different angles and discussion points around the questions. Huge thank you for coming on today. I hope the audience have enjoyed it, and this really brings the discussion to a close. So I hope the audience have found this useful. I'm going to leave you with this. As the volume of data increases, so does the opportunity for all of you. But data alone is nothing. Without the ability to draw insights and ultimately take action based upon it, investing in staff and finding new ways to get the most out of data will be vital across all industries, and will empower organisations to thrive, survive in this disruptive market. Qlik and our partners can help. We've proven solutions and an industry-leading data literacy program. From here, I'd like to invite you to explore the rest of the content available and join us for our next session tomorrow. With that, thank you very much for your time, and again, a huge thank you to my panelists today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That concludes our webinar today. The webinar will remain open for the next 15 minutes to answer your questions via the Q&A box. If we were unable to reply to your question today, we will respond via email. Thank you for attending today's webinar.